Hello and welcome to Living History. I'm your host, Mike Hauser, and with us today we have Fred Wilson. Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. Well, Fred, you and I were talking a little bit before the show got started. Why don't you tell the folks when you came to the Conejo Valley?
Well, my first day of employment in the Conejo Valley was November 1 of 1962, but it wasn't until July 19th of 1963 that my late wife Carol and our three children moved here, and been here ever since, although my wife has died and I've since remarried.
Now, you came here work-related for people in Thousand Oaks, a rather famous name, the Janz Corporation. Tell us a little bit about what you did and what was it like in the early years of Thousand Oaks.
Well, yes, I was hired by the Janz Corporation to become their controller. They had a plan to go public. And they did not have any staff who had experience with SEC registrations and things of that kind. And I had some experience, so I was hired. Interestingly enough, they never went public, but I was able to work with them for 9 years. And things were really just beginning. What is now Janz Marketplace was quite a bit smaller than it is now. That and the Park Oak Shopping Center were about the only shopping facilities in town. The population in the entire valley was about 10,000. Everything that we now think of as Westlake was a cattle ranch, and everything that we think of as Wildwood was movie locations, and so on.
Did the Janz Corporation have really specific plans early on for how Thousand Oaks was going to look?
Yes, what happened was in about 1958, I believe it was, they put on the market the area which is now known as Conejo Oaks. And those lots sold so quickly that the company realized that there must be a market for housing here. So they, the next week, called a major planning company in Los Angeles to come out and help them develop the plans. And consistent with their prior history in places like Westwood Village and some of the other Los Angeles area communities, they were determined to have a quality development where people would really have a good life.
Now, what was it like working for the Janzes?
Well, I consider the Janz Corporation a very progressive company in management as well as in real estate development. Key officers were given a lot of freedom in sort of creating their own job and making things better within the company as well as without. We were encouraged to participate in public affairs and charitable events and things of that kind. It's I think the best job I ever had from that standpoint.
What were your impressions of the first city leaders, the first city councils, the first mayors, first city managers?
Well, I think my impression of them has continued for now 40 years. We've had a lot of city council people who I would consider visionaries. They didn't limit themselves to keeping the streets clean and things of that kind. They really looked ahead. And I think that the city staff, particularly city managers, but also the planning director and the public utilities director and others, have done a good job of executing the visions that the city councilmen have set forth.
Were there any early controversies in terms of some decisions that were made to either put in a particular business or decisions that were made to take Thousand Oaks in a particular direction?
Well, there are always differences of opinion. And there were some, I think, specific projects that I don't call to mind right now that weren't particularly popular, but the direction in general was good, and that it was to have open space and to have what I now think is the feature about Thousand Oaks that makes it so good, and that is balance. We have some industry, some commerce in the form of shopping centers and retail, auto stores and things of that kind. We have some open space, a lot more than many people have. We have the cultural aspects of the community with the Civic Arts Plaza and other arts events. It's a balanced community. Whatever you need, you can probably find here.
Now, back in 1963, if you had had just a few sentences to describe to somebody what Thousand Oaks was like, what would you have told them?
In 1963, well, it surely was a lot different from now, but I certainly would have said it was a beautiful place with prospects for becoming a great place to live, particularly at the hands of the Janus Corporation development plans. And I know when I was hired, I was told that I would be employed in a corporate office which was then being established in Santa Monica, although I would be spending some time here in Thousand Oaks and some time in some of their other locations throughout the country. So I went house shopping in Santa Monica and in Thousand Oaks, and that was an easy choice to make, and so we bought in Thousand Oaks, and I've lived here ever since.
Now, that same question, how would you describe somebody, but in the year 2003, how would you describe Thousand Oaks to them?
Well, the beauty still applies. The dreams, to a great extent, have come true with all of the balance that I described earlier. We're a little short on low-income housing. So many of the people who work in the community can't afford to live here, which is not exactly a disaster, but it certainly is a discomfort. And I'm happy to see that the city continues to try to improve in that. But it's a great place to live. When I left the Janus Corporation, I spent a little time looking for work elsewhere. But I had decided that I was not going to I didn't think I would take work which would require me to move. I would probably be willing to take work that would require me to commute. But in the end analysis, I established my own CPA practice and stayed in town. My commute was about 1.5 miles.
Now, you're now involved in an organization. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Under One Roof?
Under One Roof. Well, my son and I started a corporation that's called Community Conscience, and that happened early in 1982 when the Reagan administration said that they were going to tell local communities not to rely on the federal government for their funding, but to try to solve their own problems locally. And a group of people in town, businessmen and others alike, without trying to say whether that was a good idea or not, but recognizing it was going to change the way that social services would be delivered in the community, set about to organize and develop a plan to help the local charities, which were already in existence in the community, make that adjustment in how they would serve. And over a period of time, we developed this plan of having one facility which would house most, if not all, or one of each of the various types of social services cooperating. And we added to that a financial plan which would call for the building to be totally paid for by the private sector, although we ended up getting quite a bit of help from the public sector. The city of Thousand Oaks was very generous and helpful in a number of ways, so that the agencies in that center would not have to pay rent. One thing that made that possible was we realized early on that we needed to lease about 1/3 of the space to government agencies, which would pay a fair market rent, and that money would be used to pay the utilities, the gardener, the pest control, and the insurance and things of that kind. So as of this moment, that the tenants pay nothing except a small stipend to cover some of the utilities cost, which helps them control the utility expense. but otherwise every agency in there is healthy and able to do a lot more in the delivery of their services than they could if they had to pay rent.
Now, is this a unique situation to Thousand Oaks, or has this concept been expanded to other communities?
Well, we know of these partial answers to that question. I was not able to participate, but Hugo Roach from our organization a year ago went to a conference in San Diego where a number of multi-tenant charitable facilities told their stories and exchanged ideas. It's not clear to us, and I think we will find that none of them have the financial arrangement that we have. Most of them, I think, were for-profit developers who took an idle facility and induced the charities to come in at reduced rents, perhaps because they may have purchased an old facility at a low cost or were renting it from the government at a low rent or some such thing like that. So there are a number of organizations in the country which have multi-tenant facilities. Beyond that, I really can't describe what has happened, although I know that the city of Santa Barbara, a group of foundations, bought a building which they intended to house with nonprofits. The city of Simi Valley is trying to do the same thing under the auspices of the Rotary Club there, and the city of Moore Park is beginning to investigate the same situation.
Good. Tell us about the Conejo Future Foundation.
Oh, I'd be quite happy to that. I'm one of the founding directors. In 1972, Dr. Raymond Olson, who had recently retired from California Lutheran University, contacted me and 3 or 4 other citizens, and we chatted about the idea of having an organization like the Conejo Future Foundation, which would deal not with the problems of today, but with the possible problems of tomorrow, and try to identify them, to develop defenses or cures or whatever as the case may be, and get the community involved in working in that direction. And among other things, under a contract with the city, it did a social needs assessment to determine what the social needs were in Thousand Oaks. And Community Conscience used that end product partly to generate support for what it was doing, because Community Conscience was doing what the city said needed to be done. And since then, that organization has grown and has become the Conejo Las Virgenes Future Foundation, because early on we realized that some of the problems were going to come to us from the east, and therefore to establish connection with our eastern neighbor was desirable.
So what is the biggest challenge facing Thousand Oaks in the future, and how would you suggest that it be solved?
I think low-income housing will be a problem for quite a while. The rapidly increasing growth of our senior citizen population will be a problem as to health care and housing. As a matter of fact, I would like to see, what I think would make a lot of sense would be for the planning department to look hard at, quote, granny houses, end quote, that could be built on the back lot of homes, because I think it's not healthy for the grandparents to live in some distant place, from their children and grandchildren. So those are 2 things that come to mind at the beginning.
Good. What's your most memorable experience having lived in Thousand Oaks?
Oh, that's really hard. You're going to make me leave out a bunch of others.
Well, how about several memorable
well,
experiences?
I will tell you one. It's kind of an interesting little romance story. My first wife died in the fall of 1983. In September of 1984, I was named by the Chamber of Commerce as the Conejo Valley Man of the Year. And that same year, a lady by the name of Marge Music was named Conejo Valley Woman of the Year. And although I had met her briefly a couple of months before that, we hadn't had much contact and I didn't know her very well. But to make a long story short, we were married in December 3 years after that.
Well, congratulations.
I think that's pretty memorable, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I was about to ask you what your biggest accomplishment was, but I'm wondering if that was it.
Well, she says that I lulled her suspicions to sleep with a simple country boy story, so maybe that was a significant accomplishment. But no, getting the Under One Roof project completed and paid for, I devoted a lot of time to that over a 20-year period, and I'm really happy that I was able to get that done. I think most people who know me would say the same thing, that was my best accomplishment.
Right. Now, you had told me you also had a couple of Jan's-related stories. Why don't you share one with us?
Oh, well, yeah, I had quite a few of those. Well, I think one that involved the city would be the day that the Jan's Corporation deeded to the city of Thousand Oaks the parcel of land on Hillcrest, which became then the Civic Center shortly thereafter. And waiting for the ceremony to begin, Mrs. Florence Jan, known as Flossie to most of us, turned to Ed Jan's after looking up the hill. They were sitting, I think, down near Hillcrest Drive, and said, "Don't we ever give away any flat land?" So I thought that was pretty cute. She was a remarkable woman.
Now, you had also mentioned to me that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that go on that help a city to develop an identity and how it grows out. Can you let people know who might not be familiar with the process? What are some of the considerations that go into when deciding what development you're going to bring to a community, how you're going to market houses, how you're going to bring people in?
Well, to a great extent, the Jan's Corporation and the city of Thousand Oaks did not have a problem attracting people. We had enough of natural attractions that the growing population from the San Fernando Valley just worked its way out here, so we didn't have to do a lot of saying, "Come to Thousand Oaks." There was the usual marketing of saying, "Buy our properties." And the way the Jan's Corporation attacked that was to make certain that the development was of a quality that was visible and ascertainable to prospective purchasers. But there were a lot of amenity situations which came about, I think, because of the Jan's Corporation's encouragement for its officers to be involved in the community, to join charities and whatever. And so each of us sort of went the direction that we wanted to, the things that pleased us, and we were able sometimes to get encouragement from the Jan's Corporation or the Jan's Foundation in cash gifts to get things started, or in ideas or encouragement. And that's the other aspect about the Thousand Oaks, I think, that I failed to mention when I talked about it being a rounded community. It is also full of volunteers who are so happy to be here that they'll do anything to keep life at least as good as it is, if not make it a little bit better. So as you are probably aware, there are a number of organizations that are working continuously to make things better. The Alliance for the Arts and the various churches and other religious institutions in the community, and the Rotary clubs and other service clubs and things of that kind. So all those things are working to make it happen.
Have a personal hero?
A personal hero?
Somebody
locally?
Locally or Anybody?
Well, gee, that's really hard. That's really hard. But I would say one that I would pick out would be Dr. Raymond Olson, because of his founding of the Conejo Future Foundation, because of his early work in the Alliance for the Arts. My wife Marge is somewhat of a hero because she's been active in the community also, working for some of those same organizations. And I particularly appreciate Grant Brimhall's willing to sometimes stick his neck out to accomplish something in a unique and imaginative way that made things happen. So those are some of the heroes I have in mind.
Do you have a personal motto or a guiding philosophy on how you do things?
Well, the Methodist Church has had a big influence on my look at things. I've tried to appreciate all that I have that I didn't necessarily earn. It just came to me. To care about those who don't have everything that they need, and just try to make the place a little bit better when I leave it than when I came to it.
Speaking of that, how would you like history to remember you?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, I think I just said it. If I did that right, that's how I'll be remembered.
Good, good. Any other question that I should have asked and didn't?
Well, I'll mention my children while I'm at it.
Sure.
I have 3 children, and my wife Marge has 2. My 2 daughters live here in Thousand Oaks. My son, who graduated from Thousand Oaks High School and Cal State Northridge, and then got a master's and doctor's degree from the Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., last year was installed as president of that organization. Marge's 2 sons, one lives in Chicago and is a musician, and one lives in Sebastopol, California, and is a management consultant.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having taken some time out of your day to spend with us and to let us know about how the early years of Thousand Oaks came about. Appreciate it very much.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope that somewhere down the line, when someone views this picture, they don't say, "What on earth did they do that for?"
And I forgot to ask you, you moved here in 1963. What did you pay for your home?
I paid $33,000 for a 2,700 square foot home.
And what would it sell for now?
Oh, I suppose 400,000 or something like that. It's on a half-acre lot.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Okay, thank you.